If you weren't aware, I'm a member of YEGS. YEGS has some minigames on the official Realms minigame tab, which is pretty cool. A couple members of the group were working on a project that needed a cinematic camera for cutscenes, so they asked me to make a datapack for them that allows the user to define a camera flight path for use in their game. I said, cool, I can do that. I didn't know how to do that. What's worse is that this is actually the first project I've worked on for YEGS, and there are a lot of ridiculously smart people here. I had to make a good impression. So I started with what I did know. Whatever path the user wants to make, it will always have a start and end point. The question we need to answer is, how does the camera move between those 2 points as the animation progresses? The simplest form of interpolation is linear interpolation. The idea is that you start the animation at 0% and progress until you get to 100%. At 0%, you should be at the starting point. At 50%, you should be halfway between. At 100%, you should be at the end point. The math for this is pretty simple. As the animation progresses, this function gives the starting point less weight and the ending point more weight. That's the basic idea behind linear interpolation. Now, scrap linear interpolation, we don't want it. If you're making cool cinematics, you want better functionality than linear interpolation could give you. If you've ever used the replay mod, you know that smooth movement and the ability to have seamlessly curved paths is pretty much a necessity. So that means that I need to learn some kind of math that allows for nice curvy lines. My mind immediately went to all the stuff I made in Microsoft Paint as a kid. That, and this. Do you remember the Bezier curve tool? 'Cause I did. I mean, I never knew how to actually use it, but hey, this is a great time to learn. I went to YouTube for an explanation, and I was surprised how quickly I found a perfect answer. There's no chance I can explain this concept as well as Guide Dev does, but here goes. The idea behind Bezier curves is that instead of only having 2 points and interpolating between them, you have 3 points. Then you interpolate once between points 1 and 2, and again between points 2 and 3. 2 interpolations, which means 2 new points. Interpolate a third time between those 2 that you just calculated, and you'll have this neat curve. Point 1 is the start, point 3 is the end, and point 2 is the control point. Basically, we interpolated between some already interpolated values, and what we got is called a quadratic Bezier curve. If we go one level deeper, adding a 4th point, we get a second quadratic Bezier curve. Interpolate between those 2 and you'll have a cubic Bezier curve, which has a start point, an end point, and 1 control point for each end. Now, what if we want to extend this curve? We could just make another camera path, and then when you finish the first one, the datapack sends you to the second, but let's be smarter. If you already have a Bezier curve, you can extend it by adding just 1 endpoint and 1 control point. If you hook it up just right, this will create a new curve that connects perfectly smoothly. You just need to use the endpoint of the old curve as a start point of your new one, and calculate where the new control point would be if it was reflected behind his endpoint. If my explanation was confusing, go check out the video I watched and it'll make sense. Either way, whatever comes next, I know that we're going to want to have 4 control points total, and we'll want the user to be able to move any of these points at will when designing their camera path. So I'll make 1 marker for each point, and I'll add this green dotted line between the control points and the respective endpoints. Now we're just missing the actual curve. Every tick that we want to display the curve, we need to calculate the location of 1 point on the curve, store that point in the NBT data of an armor stand, create a particle at the armor stand's new location, then increment the percent and do it all over again. If we do this 100 times, 1 for each percent, the full curve will be visible. Now, how do we do the calculation step in Minecraft? Our best tool is scoreboards because they allow us to do basic math operations. Note that I said basic. This is a bit more complicated than basic, but that's one of the nice things about math. It can always be broken down into basic steps. So if we copy the cubic Bezier curve formula to Minecraft scoreboards, taking care to manually follow the order of operations, it should look great. It didn't look great. It took me a while to diagnose, but I did figure it out eventually. To understand the issue, you need to know what I did to get the t values, the percent along the path, working. Normally, as you've been seeing in the animations, you'd have this percent be a number between 0 and 1. Unfortunately, Minecraft scoreboards only allow integers. No decimals are possible, so we need a way to get percentages that works with integers. Normally, if you want to get, say, 70% of 83, you can just calculate 0.7 times 83. We need a way to do this exact thing, but only using integers. 0.7 is the same as 70 over 100, so we can just start with 70 divided by 100, then multiply by 83, right? No, because 70 over 100 is 0.7. With integer math, the decimal gets deleted, so 70 over 100 becomes 0. Luckily, however, 70 over 100 times 83 is mathematically equivalent to 70 times 83 over 100. So if we multiply 70 by 83, we get 5,810. Then when we divide by 100, we get 58.1, which Minecraft truncates to 58. We can check our work by using a calculator that allows decimals and making sure that 0.7 times 83 is 58.1. Now we have a way to get approximate percentages using integers, and it works, but it does not come without consequence. As we saw, performing the divide by 100 step too soon causes us to lose data that we need, but there's another issue if we do it too late, and that is that the numbers we're doing operations on will grow past the Minecraft scoreboard max value, causing it to overflow to the minimum negative integer value, corrupting the entire result. Here's what I mean. When doing the calculation to find the x position at the start of the animation, the cubic Bezier curve formula gives us 100 times 100 times 100 times x1. If x1 is 2148, then calculating these multiplications will exceed the max integer and cause an overflow. You might be thinking, okay, so camera paths need to be kept within around 2148 blocks from 0, 0. That's not the worst thing in the world if it does still work perfectly within that range. And that would be true, except for one thing. In order to get precise coordinates pulled from the armor stand NBT data and stored as scoreboard values, I need to scale those up too. If the x value of the first point is 5.25, then if I don't scale it up, all I can do is store a 5 in the scoreboards, completely losing the 0.25. So I've been scaling it up by a factor of 100 and storing that in the scoreboards. For this example, that would mean storing a 525 in the scoreboards with the understanding that I would scale the final value back down again when I store it back into NBT data. That works great, except for when it comes to the Bezier curve thing we want to do. Since x1 is actually 100 times x1, we don't hit the overflow limit when x1 is 2148. We hit it when x1 is 21. This is a ridiculously small range to be limited to in creating a camera path. It's just not good enough. Luckily, there is a bit of finagling we can do. With a little bit of factoring, I found that in order to compensate for the fact that we're multiplying t by 100, we need to divide our final result by 100 cubed. We can avoid the issue where we overflow past the max scoreboard value halfway through if we do some of this dividing earlier. Dividing by 100 cubed is the same as dividing by 100 3 times, so if I sprinkle those 3 divisions in between some of the multiplications, I figure we can stay in the sweet spot between dividing too much too early and causing us to lose data, and dividing too little too late and causing us to overflow. The only thing left to do is hope that a sweet spot actually exists, and type /reload. This is what we like to see. This is wonderful, but it should be noted that precision is still being lost. We can't do decimal math, so it's inevitable. It should also be noted that if your path is too far from 0, 0, it will still have issues. My math says the distance is around 2 billion, but I think my math is wrong, because last time I tested this I had issues past a range of like 200. Constraining camera paths to be within 200 blocks of 0, 0 is not a terrible limit, but we can do even better. What if we had complete freedom, regardless of the distance from 0, 0? To achieve this, we can find the imaginary box that contains all points, find the coordinate of the center of the box, subtract the x, y, and z coordinates of the center of the box from each point, and then do the Bezier curve math. After we've done the math, we can just add the coordinates of the center point to each point that we calculate. This looks exactly the same, but now you can create a camera path anywhere so long as the bounding box doesn't get too large. We've been at this for a while, and I bet you're all dying to see how it looks to actually use this. Just for now, I'm setting it up so the camera always faces this diamond block. We'll add better camera angle functionality in just a second. For now, here goes. Oh no. Sorry, I'll let this animation play out before I explain. See if you can catch the issue while it plays. Yay, animation technically worked, woohoo, whatever. Okay, here's the problem. Watch again, but this time notice how abruptly you start moving when you begin the animation. That might be fine in a few or even a lot of circumstances, but it can be so much better. So today we're going to learn about the concept of easings. It's actually pretty simple. The idea is that you still have your percent that represents how far through the animation you are, but that's not exactly the value that you plug into the Bezier curve function. You're going to change it up a little first. How? Well, these are the common options. I'm just going to use the quadratic easings because the others either get difficult to calculate using Minecraft scoreboards or they're not unique enough for me to care. Just like this graph shows, we're going to plug our t value, our percent through the animation, into the function. The output is used by this graph to determine the y value of the marker. We're going to use it to determine the point along the curve. To sum up, we were using the linear raw percent through the animation to find the point on the curve. Now we're running it through a non-linear easing function first. Alright, now let's take a look. This is great and we're almost there. If you're defining a camera path, you're going to want to be able to say where the cameras should be looking. I can think of 3 main ways for the camera to behave during the animation. 1. The camera faces a specific point the entire time. That's what I use for testing, but we can make it a real feature if we just add a camera target marker, then turn the player's head to look at it at every point in the animation. The second method is facing forward. I could make the player's camera just always look toward the next point in the path, but this doesn't actually work out too great. I assume it's because every point is a little off of what it should be because of the whole Minecraft scoreboard integer thing losing precision. I don't think there's anything I can do about this, unless I use a little calculus to determine the direction the player is going at each point instead of trying to approximate it using each subsequent point in the path. I didn't actually consider this till now, writing the scripts. It would require some more math and double the amount of NBT operations, but there's only one NBT operation per tick during the animation, so it might actually not be that bad. You know what? I'm doing it right now. Okay, it's done, and it looks great so long as your camera path isn't made of multiple curves. If it is, then you may get this sharp turn over time. This is easy to explain if you know calculus. When connecting 2 curves this way, the position is continuous and always differentiable. The velocity is continuous, but it's not always differentiable. And the acceleration isn't always continuous or differentiable. This is because it's technically a piecewise function. If this stuff doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it, we're moving on. I guess I'll leave the old method in as an option in case anyone wants to create a roller coaster or something. I don't know. But the third method I can think of uses keyframes. At each point, the user can define an angle, and as the animation progresses, we'll do a simple linear interpolation between them. To be clear, linear interpolation doesn't necessarily mean there will be lines visible, just that the values have a constant rate of change over time. This isn't the cleanest animation, and I completely stole the math, but I figured I would add it anyway. I think your most consistently best option for a clean camera angle animation is to choose the look at target option and move the target marker around as you please. You could even replace it with a different entity if you wanted to. If I were to add another option, I would make it so that there were 2 main paths for each animation. One that the camera/player follows, and one that they look at. If you thought this was an in-depth explanation of this data pack, you would not believe the stuff I've chosen to leave out. For loops and NBT storage and details that just would not be fun to listen to. Instead, subscribe so you don't miss when I post a showcase/tutorial in a few days. This data pack is way more versatile than I've shown here, so check the description for a download link and test it out while you wait. If you're here and you understood all the math and everything, you're a genius, cause I know it wasn't my teaching skills that got you here.